integrating anger. So let's take the example of little Annabelle. Annabelle was finally getting to an age now where she wanted to be treated like an adult. She was 19 going on 20, and she said that this time she would speak up when her mom tried to put her down. A lot of times, for instance, her mother would kind of shoot down Annabelle's ideas. So Annabelle would say, I really would love to do this someday. And then her mom would just have like little cuts and like, no, that won't work. You shouldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. That's a bad idea. And she would always like cut down Annabelle. So Annabelle talked to her therapist about it. And her therapist said, well, you should respectfully speak up to your mother and let her know that you don't appreciate when she does that because it's stunting your growth and your development. And also, it's making it so that you don't feel like you want to express yourself to your mom. And Annabelle thought about it and she replied back to her therapist, well, isn't that like being mean or disrespectful for me to talk back to her? And the therapist said, no, it's actually more disrespectful for you to allow your mother to continue to treat you in a way that makes you despise her, for you to allow your mother to continue to treat you in a way that makes you hate being around her. And so if you speak up, then you avoid getting to an extreme situation where you end up running away, which would be disrespectful, or ghosting, or getting very angry and saying something very mean. So after Annabelle thought about the advice that the therapist gave her, Annabelle decided this time I'm going to speak up. So she was talking to her mom. She said a few things about what she wanted to do in the future. Her mom came in with the usual, I don't know, Annabelle, blah, 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 and started being a little bit too negative. And Annabelle, she's about to say something, and she just was like, okay, and just change the subject. She missed out on her opportunity to speak up for herself. Why was it so hard for her to speak up to herself? Afterwards, Annabelle was kind of beating herself up. She wondered why she struggled so much to be able to just say what she thought and say what she meant. Why was it so hard to speak up to her mother? And for that reason, to other people as well. One of the main things that we need as trauma survivors in order to have a robust personality and to be able to stand up for ourselves, what we believe in, is we need to be able to integrate anger. To integrate anger. Oh, well, what does that mean? To integrate anger? Well, many trauma survivors are taught in their childhood that anger is inappropriate. So their parents see that bit of defiance or that angry disposition or the emotion inside the child and they stamp it out. They become very harsh toward the child. They say, that's not acceptable. They may even beat the child. For what? What was their crime? Being angry. I never want to see that type of attitude in you. As a result, the child may become afraid to show anger. In time, they may become afraid even to feel anger. And in time, they may lose track of their anger at all, and they learn to compensate using other emotions. They may actually lose track of their emotions altogether. It may be hard for them to really know how they feel because they're so busy suppressing how they feel because they learn that it's wrong or that they can't survive in their household. Do you know anyone like that? Someone that was raised to never be angry? Well, if we don't learn to integrate anger properly into our personality, we can't actually mature. So we walk around in the world like a big open wound. Just imagine a person with no anger. Take yourself out of the equation for a moment. If you walk around like a big open wound, you're extremely vulnerable all the time. Annabelle told the story one time that she was at a store and the store clerk recognized her from social media, but then started poking fun at her, saying, aren't you that person on social media? Blah, blah, blah. Don't you do this? Don't you do that? And started saying things that were hurting Annabelle's feelings. Annabelle said that she did eventually turn around and walk away, but she looked like or she felt like a girl that was just lost looking for her mother. Because she doesn't have anger integrated into her personality, she doesn't know how to be firm, tough, exacting, decisive, to be able to stand up for herself, to set boundaries for herself. Instead, she goes around feeling like she just has to default to vulnerability, sadness, weakness, and fear all the time. I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. And when she's not scared, she's afraid. And when she's not afraid, she's in fear. When does she have the opportunity to show strength? Has she developed the ability to show strength? She can't do that if she hasn't integrated anger into her personality. But again, what does that mean to integrate anger into our personality? Are we supposed to walk around angry all the time, or someone with a hot temper who gets angry very easily? Well, no, that wouldn't be the proper form of integration. That's just another form of de-integration of anger, when we are extremely irritable all the time and we haven't integrated into our personality. The anger is our personality. Or if we're someone who has a very short temper, again, we haven't developed all of the necessary qualities such as patience, such as discernment, such as deliberation, discussion, such as deference for other people. And so to integrate anger into the personality, it doesn't mean that we're an angry person. It means that we understand how to access anger as a fuel source. How to access anger as a fuel source. This is a life skill that everyone needs. I was just reading this amazing book. It's called Mind by Roman Zanoni. And if you'd like to pick up a copy of it, you can do so on Amazon. And I was really impressed in the chapter that talks about emotions. And in there, it was breaking down how all of our emotions can be put on a color scale system so that each emotion will blend into the next emotion. And if you take an emotion on this side and an emotion on that side, it will equal an emotion in between. Anger is an in-between emotion. It is the sum of two primary emotional states, as the book identifies. The first primary emotional state is irritation, and the second, irritation is the primary emotional state from which anger springs from. But when we combine irritation with satiation, which is the primary emotional state where happiness comes from, irritation and satiation combined equal what? If you put irritation and satiation together and blend them up, what do you get? It's kind of strange to think of being both happy and angry at the same time. But the answer is power. And what do you mean exactly? Now, if you go on to any sports field, if you look at any sports being played professionally, and you'll see something very interesting happening with these players of the sport. What does their face look like? Especially when they're on the field or on the court, when they're scoring goals. What does their face look like when they make a touchdown? After all, aren't they doing something that makes them happy? So if they're doing something that makes them happy, then why is it they look so mad? This is the combination of irritation and satiation being powerful. They're in the state of power. Professional athletes are accessing irritation, anger, and satiation, happiness. They like the sport they're playing. They would tell you, I love what I do, right? But their face looks like this, right? And then when they score a goal, they do what? Ah, right? They got what is that face? It looks like anger. But they're not angry. If you told, are you upset right now? Like, no, come on, we're killing it. Let's go, let's go. Come on, baby. Right? But this face, what is this face when it looks like anger, but it's not really anger? That is the combination of satiation and irritation. It is power. This is why it's so important that you do not lose anger or suppress anger. It is an important part of your development These athletes have learned to integrate anger into their personality. That's what makes them fierce warriors. Any amazing hero has learned to integrate that anger into their personality. Are you following me so far? Is this making sense to you? What a healthy person is able to do when it comes to something that makes them upset, instead of just saying, oh, no, 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 I can't be angry, so let me default to vulnerability, weakness, helplessness. What a healthy person is able to do is recognize that something is bothersome to them, irritating to them. And they're able to take it and put it right here. They might notice that something is really irking them. Maybe somebody made a comment at work about them, and that really ticks them off. Or maybe they got passed over for promotion, and that really upsets them. They're able to take that and they go, okay, and they put it right here. This is integrating anger. It is taking it and using it as a fuel source for later, because you're going to need it. How do fuel sources work on an adaptive level? Like your car runs on fuel, right? Even if you have an electric car, then it runs on a fuel source, which would then be the battery, which is this chemical storage, which, not unlike fuel, ultimately has to get converted into some type of energy source. So with the actual liquid fuel, then it gets used into a fuel injection system and creates mini combustions inside the pistons of the engine. And there's where you get the power. For the battery, when you press down on the accelerator, the energy is converted into a current, right? And then that current is a voltage that is able to power the movement of the car. In both of these cases, we have stored fuel. We've taken it and we've put it here. But if you take that fuel as it is, it's explosive, right? What would happen if you just lit the entire tank, a full tank of gas, and you just lit a match and put it on fire? What would happen? Boom! It would explode, right? It's the same thing with a battery in an electric car. It could explode if it's used improperly or charged improperly. These are very big sources of energy that are explosive. That's what anger is like if you utilize it improperly, or worse, allow it to use you. It is a big fuel source, and when people don't control their anger, they and they rage out. And they do and say a bunch of things that they're going to regret later. Someone said something bad about me. If I don't control my anger, I'm getting mad, I'm yelling, I'm screaming, and next thing you know, I'm getting pulled out by security because someone said something I didn't like. They passed me up for a promotion, and I'm pushing papers down on the ground, and I'm upset. And the next thing you know, I'm being pulled out by security because they didn't respond in a way that was controlled. I didn't control the anger. I just lit a match and just let the whole thing explode. That is not proper integration of anger. We must never do that. When we just suppress the anger, we don't know what we're going to use it for. We're just acting like it doesn't exist. It also will create an explosion because it's an improper use of the anger. Because we're not making sure we're utilizing it properly. What we're doing is we're suppressing it, so we may become passive aggressive. Passive aggressive is where you're mad, but you don't want to show that you're mad. So you're just going to make a bunch of little comments and behaviors that hopefully will show the person you're mad, but you're not going to actually just say that you're mad. So you just really make life difficult for everyone, including yourself, because you're not really getting your needs met, but you're making it hard for the person who's working with you. That's passive aggressive. It's really just, I don't know what to do with my anger, so I'm just going to hold it, but I'm not going to show it, and that's not adaptive either. Or you could be the type, you get passive emotion, you act fine at work, but then you go home and you're pushing everything down and exploding. And again, now your family's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? So how do we integrate the anger adaptively? Our number one tool for healing, pausing. That rule of 7 seconds will save lives. You take a moment when the slight happens. Someone said something you didn't like. You get passed up for the promotion, and you pause the 7 seconds. I'm going to allow all the chemicals to wash through my system, and I feel it. My heart is beating. I'm getting hot. I can feel the anger. But what I'm not doing is allowing it to move my body. Outside of blinking and breathing, I'm sitting still. Why am I doing this? Because anger will be the cause of many regrettable decisions. Anger will cause me to sin if I don't allow this to work through chemically while I sit still physically and analyze, right? It's not a good excuse. Say, I got angry. Okay, what? So I hit my wife, and then what am I gonna do? Say, I got mad, I'm sorry. It's not a good excuse, folks. I'm sorry I was angry. It's not a good excuse. So yes, you're gonna feel the anger, and it's gonna not feel pleasant inside of you, but don't allow that to control you. You stay in control. You, the conscious ethereal being, you stay in control. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take that and you say, okay, I'm gonna put that here to be used later, just like a battery or fuel tank. You're going to store up that basis you have for anger. This is something that professional athletes do very well, not the least of which is Michael Jordan, who notoriously one time made up in his head that somebody said something smart to him about how good he was or wasn't. And then he goes on to make the same amount of points that the other person made in the whole game in the first half of the game. He's just he got angry, but he used it. He was using it on the court. He wasn't doing anything bad. In fact, for the city of Chicago on that night, he was a hero. But how did he pull out this performance? Well, when they asked him later, it was like, oh yeah, I made it up. Like I made up the story that this guy said something. What is wrong with this man? He's making up stories to make himself angry. Nothing's wrong with him. That's exactly what's right about him. He understands, and all professional athletes understand how to utilize sources of anger as a fuel source to pull out a superior performance when it comes time to be a warrior. Now, most of us are not professional athletes, although I would recommend you do physical activity like play sports and work out and run and things like that. And at those times, utilize your anger to push a better performance, which will push you to a peak physical fitness. But nonetheless, we're not professional athletes, most of us. So how are we going to use our anger? Well, in a much lesser way, that fuel source with a little accelerator or a fuel injection will create the current, the voltage needed to push us forward where needed. For instance, in the book, I talk about a buddy of mine who was cheated by his boss. He was working on a commission job and he went a long time without getting a check. And finally, he made a really big sale. He's selling furniture, office furniture. And he was ready for that check to come through. He calculated that by the time he would get his commission, it was going to be about $5,000. He needed that $5,000 check because it had been a long time since he had gotten paid anything. And so on the day of payday, he goes into his boss's office and he sits down. His boss hands him the check. He looks down, $1,200. But my friend understood how to integrate anger. He asked his boss, "What is this?" The boss, "Oh, blah, blah, blah," and made a bunch of excuses. He said, "This is not what I was expecting." The boss said, "Well, that's not, well, you don't understand the expenses and blah, blah, blah." And as angry as my friend felt in that moment, you know what he said to his boss? He said, "Thank you. Thank you. Because I will never allow someone to do this to me again." Took that anger and put it right here. And he went out and he started his own business. And to this day, he works for himself. And he never allowed anybody to decide that his commission check will be less than it really is supposed to be and to cheat him. And you can bet he's happier now in the situation he's in. But he couldn't create that situation if he didn't have the fuel source. He utilized what made him angry as a fuel source. So when that person is saying something bad about you, "Oh, you're not going to be able to do well," you say, "Thank you for that. Okay." And then you store it as a fuel source, and then you remind yourself when you're feeling lazy and the going is getting tough and you're feeling like you don't know if you should move forward on it or if you can move forward on it. You remind yourself in that moment of that source of that anger, because that anger, that irritation mixed with the satiation of doing something you truly want to do creates power, combustion inside the pistons of your life, of your body, to move you forward toward the goal that you want to achieve. Or maybe just to be able to speak up for yourself. Truthfully, that's something Annabelle's still working on. Just that ability to speak up for herself. She still lives at home with her mom. Her mom still domineers over her. Even though she's 20 now, and even though she graduated school early, she's scared. She doesn't know if she can do it. But what do you think? Do you think that if she learned to integrate anger into her personality, to have a little bit more of an edge, she could achieve whatever it was she wanted? At minimum, she could speak up to protect herself, her well-being, and to set some boundaries between her and her engulfing mother? I think so. I know so because I've seen my clients do it time and time again. You have the ability to grow, to change. And although you weren't given the tool you needed of knowing how to integrate anger from a young age, you can learn it now. Will you make some mistakes? Of course, it's a part of growth. And that's why we hope to be able to do it in our adolescence. But if we didn't have that environment, let this be your chance now. Work with your specialist, your therapist, and do it now. You don't need a specialist. Just do it on your own, but do it now. How? Start pausing and meditating when something triggers you and makes you upset. Learn to identify your emotion in that moment. Practice that. And when you identify anger, take it, put it right here. We're not suppressing it. We're going to let it out. Just little by little in adaptive ways, we're going to use it to get something very important done. But how you use that anger is what determines whether you are a hero or a Karen or a criminal, right? Because, for instance, if let's say I was going in, someone told me, that house right there, they're running a human trafficking ring in there. And I say, you know what? I hire private agents and we go and I put on bulletproof vests. How do you expect me to bust through that door? And they're running a human trafficking ring inside that house. How do you expect me to bust through that door? You think I'm going to come in like this? Hello. So sorry for the intrusion. Oh boy, this is a little awkward. Uh, um, So are you guys maybe doing like a human trafficking ring in here? You think I'm busting in like that? No. Boom, I'm putting my foot through the door, going in, I'm yelling, pointing fingers, right? That's the picture of a hero. We want to see our hero busting through the door and do what needs to be done. What's my face going to look like? It's going to look like I'm a little angry, like I'm a little irritated. It's going to be serious, but I'm doing something that's good, that's valuable, that brings satiation. It's important to me. I'm accessing the anger that I need because I'm thinking about the injustice of what's happening to these people being trafficked. And then I'm using that as power to move forward. My disposition, yes, is angry, but I'm overjoyed that I'm able to help someone to break free from the situation. That's how we tap into our personal power. The reason why in this situation I'm a hero is because I'm applying it to something that is truly righteous, that is truly worthwhile. What makes you a Karen is when you apply the anger and all the righteous indignation to something that wasn't well thought out, to something that was a bad idea because you didn't do enough meditation and deliberation ahead of time. If you want to look up stories about Karens, you can just type it in the internet, and they got video after video of these individuals. A Karen is a slang term used to refer to a person that gets very upset and starts trying to exact justice over a situation where they are actually not in the right. They're acting in entitlement. And so they'll be outside yelling at people about parking in their favorite parking spot. They'll be in the store demanding to talk to a manager about something that really isn't owed to them. And so if you want to avoid being a Karen or avoid getting carried away with your anger, if you want to avoid suppressing it, take the time to meditate, to pause, and to think when you feel triggered, when something is upsetting to you. And don't just talk yourself out of it. Recognize if you have a good cause or if something's irritating to you, you may be able to use it for later. Put it right here. Develop all of your other good qualities: patience, love, kindness, forgiveness. And then you find a way out of love for yourself, for others, to tap into this fuel source to push you toward peak performance so that you can help not just yourself, but the others that will benefit from your actions. You can learn more about these concepts in my book, Mind by Roman Zanoni. It's available on Amazon.